Today, we're diving deep into one of the weirdest texts you probably never heard of, a violent, bizarre vision from an alchemist written almost 1,800 years ago. But what's really amazing is how centuries later, the psychologist Carl Jung looked at this nightmare and saw something incredible. Not a failed chemistry experiment, but a perfect, powerful map of the human soul.
So this is our starting point. This incredibly graphic image from an alchemist named Zosimos of Panopolis. It's disturbing, it's visceral, and it just makes you ask, what on earth is going on here? What could this possibly mean?
And that, right there, is the central mystery we're going to try and unravel. Was Zosimos just writing down a really bad dream, basically an ancient horror story? Or is there a hidden code buried in all that violence, a symbolic guide to one of the most profound journeys a person can take? The journey of becoming who you truly are. To get to the answer, we have to go all the way back to 3rd century Egypt. We're talking about a Gnostic alchemist named Zosimos. The story goes, he fell asleep thinking about his work, and what came next was a series of visions so strange, so powerful, that people are still trying to figure them out today. So in the dream, he sees this priest, a guy named Ion, who says he's been transformed into a spirit. Okay, fine, but the way he did it? Through unendurable torment. And right away, we're hit with this huge paradox. How does rebirth, becoming a spirit, come from something so awful? And believe me, it just gets stranger from there. Zosimos sees people boiling in water, but somehow still alive. He sees figures being dismembered, and at one point, a man literally eats himself. It's just a relentless, surreal nightmare. So after he wakes up from all this, you'd expect some profound spiritual revelation, right? Well, not exactly. His conclusion is almost shockingly boring. He just says to himself, is not this the composition of the waters? He thought all that horror was just a metaphor for a chemical reaction he was working on. Kind of feels like he missed the point, doesn't it?
And that is where Carl Jung steps in, almost 17 centuries later. Jung looked at texts just like this one, and he saw something that Zosimos and his peers just couldn't, a direct window into the deepest parts of the human mind. Jung's master key was this idea of psychological projection. He basically argued that these alchemists, who didn't have our modern science or psychology, were unconsciously projecting their own inner dramas onto the stuff in their labs. They thought they were watching lead and mercury transform, but what they were really watching was the transformation of their own souls. And that realization just changes everything. Suddenly, the great work of alchemy isn't about turning lead into literal gold. No, it was always a metaphor for what Jung called individuation, the epic journey of integrating all the different parts of your psyche to become a whole, complete person.
Okay, so now that we have this psychological key, let's go back and unlock the first big symbol in Zosimos' vision, all of that constant, brutal sacrifice and dismemberment.
Let's look at that quote from the priest again. He was dismembered in accordance with the rule of harmony. Now that's just a bizarre phrase, right? How can violence be harmonious? Well, that's our big, flashing neon sign that we are dealing with a symbol, not a literal act.
In Jung's world, this is what's known as psychic dismemberment. It's a symbol for the incredibly painful but absolutely necessary process of breaking down who you think you are, your ego, your rigid worldview. It has to be metaphorically torn apart, so that something new, something more whole and, yes, more harmonious can be built in its place.
And here's the kicker. The vision keeps showing us figures who are both the priest and the victim, the one doing the sacrificing and the one being sacrificed. That's because this isn't something that happens to you. It's an inner transformation that you have to willingly inflict upon yourself for your own growth. You are both the sculptor and the stone.
So this whole breakdown of the ego, it doesn't just happen in thin air. It takes place inside a very specific medium, and it's the very water that Zosimos himself was so obsessed with.
You know, Zosimos actually gave us the clue himself. He was right. The vision was about the composition of the waters. He just made one tiny mistake. He was thinking about chemistry, not about his own soul.
This symbolic water has a name, the aqua permanens, or the divine water. For alchemists, it was this mythical solvent that could dissolve anything. For Jung, it was the perfect metaphor for the unconscious mind. This vast, chaotic, powerful ocean inside us that is the source of both total destruction and incredible new life. So when you plunge into this water of the unconscious, a three-step process kicks off. First, your old self, your old ego, gets dissolved. Then the essential pieces are purified. It's like a spiritual deep cleaning. And finally, those cleansed parts are recombined to form a new, renewed spirit. And all of this leads us to the ultimate prize, the final goal of this entire crazy alchemical quest. What is it that you create at the end of all this pain and dissolution? Well, it's the legendary Philosopher's Stone. But here's the thing. The process isn't a straight line. It's a circle, and it's captured perfectly by that ancient symbol of the Ouroboros, the dragon or the snake eating its own tail. The alchemists said it slays itself, weds itself, and impregnates itself. It's a symbol for the endless, self-contained cycle of death and rebirth that is the journey of the soul.
And this is where the parallels just click into place perfectly. Turning base metal into gold? That's just a symbol for integrating your conscious mind with your unconscious. Granting immortality? That's about finding a lasting, timeless sense of inner wholeness. The perfect, unbreakable stone is a metaphor for a unified, balanced personality.
And this might be the most crucial point of all. The self, this philosopher's stone or lapis, it's not something you go out and find. It's not some external goal you achieve. It's the anthropos pneumatikos, the inner spiritual person. It's a potential that is already hidden inside you, waiting to be extracted, as the alchemist said, from your own raw material.
And please don't think for a second that this is all just ancient history. As Jung himself pointed out, this stuff is timeless. The exact same archetypal images that haunted the dream of a 3rd-century alchemist, sacrifice, death, water, rebirth, they show up in the dreams of people today who have never even heard of Zosimos.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? The great work of the alchemists, with all its bizarre and frankly terrifying imagery, is really just a profound and timeless metaphor. It's a map for our own journey of inner transformation, the painful but necessary work of breaking down who we think we are so we can finally become who we were always meant to be.
In his vision, Zosimos describes a temple that's guarded by a dragon, and you have to sacrifice the dragon to get inside. It's such a powerful metaphor for our own inner barriers. So I'll leave you with this to think about. If your psyche is that temple, what dragon is guarding your door?